computer.
Good morning to everybody. My name is Larry Brooks. I'm the chairman of CANCERactive, chair of trustees. And, you know, CANCERactive is set up to help people. We like to help people. Chris loves to help people. That's what it's all about for him. It's a very giving situation. And this coming period, this special spectacular Sunday shows running every day for 8 days is really a first for us and a very new thing, but so important for people. And you're going to learn an awful lot. It's part of the giving syndrome. It's for members of the CANCERactive community. And if you see this or are recommended to it and you want to join that community, I can highly recommend that you do so, because not only will you get this, but of course you get access to all the previous shows that we've done. And there's some phenomenal articles and phenomenal shows that have been there. So, Chris, this session is entitled Under the Cancer Why You're Not Doomed banner. It's a huge statement. You know, why are you so convinced?
Well, I mean, what's interesting, I talked to all the others working with, and everybody agreed with the statement. I think personally, and I've just written a blog about it, personally, it's something I've wanted to write a blog about for ages, because there's several sides to, you know, cancer, why you're not doomed, and why I think it's correct. The first side to it is a very practical side. So, as you know, my daughter got a brain tumor. Everybody knows this. And through independent people we happen to know at the hospital, we were told it was really, really serious and she had 5 months to live. And they'd never had in London, bear in mind, this is 20-something years ago, 21, 22 years ago, they'd never had anybody live more than 18 months. And basically what happened was Catherine was alive, well and kicking after 2 years. She actually died after 4 years. So no one's going to overclaim this at all. I do actually know more now than I did then. But when Catherine was alive, kicking and well after a couple of years, LBC invited me to come and do an interview about the whole thing. And I'd written a book at the behest of the oncologists, actually, which was called Everything You Need to Know to Help You Beat Cancer. And again, let's put people in the context of 20 years ago. There were no Macolas and Natural Newses and Ty Bollingers out there. There was no information readily available to people. And that's what we started to do in CANCERactive. We brought information to people for the first time 21 years ago. We were ahead of the game on it for everybody. But what happened was LBC said, you better come over. My book is sold out in a weekend. Literally, we poor old Lindsay, who was chief exec in those days, worked flat out all weekend. And we sold something like 10,000 copies in a weekend direct. And so LBC said, come over, we want to interview you on the show, because LBC very big in London. And I came into the office on the Friday afternoon and was immediately handed the telephone. Someone wanted to talk to me. Now, you know, I'm never in England. I live abroad. And this Yorkshire voice, I can't do the accent, but this Yorkshire voice said, as you can imagine, I've been sent books, articles and magazines from all over the world, and I'm just ringing you up to tell you yours is head and shoulders above the rest. And I said, who is it? And he's Geoff Boycott. Anyway, to cut a long story short, they were going to break his jaw, go in, cut the tumor out, and give him chemo and radio. And one oncologist said he had 12 weeks to live. We know this, we've had him on the show. And the other oncologist said he thought he could save him, but he wouldn't ever talk on television again. And so I built a program for Geoff. And in the middle of it, I put a parasite kill, because my little joke, I said, when you're in India or Pakistan, Sri Lanka or whatever, did you ever get the runs? And he said, yes, all the bloody time. So I said, you got a parasite. And we killed the parasite. And as he's told the world, 8 weeks later, when he walked into Leeds Royal Infirmary, they were bloody embarrassed. So we kind of helped Geoff Boycott. And that was on the Friday afternoon. And on the Saturday morning, I went to Olympia, where there was the big health show. And that's where we were doing the interview. And Galina, you know Galina, came up to me. And she was with her husband, John. And she said, I've got 3 months to live. I've got grade 4, stage 4 ovarian. What can you do? Built a program. On the LBC interview, Mrs. Omar rang up, stage 4, grade 4 breast cancer. We had a little chat, and she went on to become a regional exec. So practical. First 3 people I ever helped, totally unprofessionally, just out of interest, really, more than anything, on the phone, and one on the radio and one in person. All have been given 3 months to live to go and sort their affairs out, write a will or whatever, and all 3 are alive today. So
Amazing.
I thought, do you know what? I think I might do this. I think I might do this to help people.
Incredible. So you hit a formula that was obviously successful. Okay. Is that why you do personal prescriptions with people?
Yeah, yes and no. I actually don't think I hit a formula. And, we've called it the Activate program and so on. But the whole idea is it's more a strategy than a formula, because formulae tend to be the same for everybody. It's what I criticize oncologists for, using the same drugs for an 82-year-old as they use for a 28-year-old. As far as I'm concerned, everyone is different. And so this is a strategy. And what I noticed very, very quickly was people build a body conducive to cancer. That's what they do over a 6 to 10 year period. And it's never one thing. It's usually half a dozen, 6, maybe more things. And something tips them over the edge about 18 months before. This is Chris Woollams' 80% rule. And that thing that tips them over the edge can just be a little dose of antibiotics, or it might be something very emotional, stress. I had 3 women in 1 week who'd all lost their mum and got left breast cancer, the emotional breast. So what I sort of started to do and realized I'd done for the first 3 people was I try and build people a body conducive to health, which sounds terribly simplistic, but actually it's a program, and everybody's program is personal to them. Because if 6 things cause it, as Dr. Henry Friedman once said, he's a chap who deals in brain tumors in America, he said, there's no one drug. It's naive to believe any one drug is ever going to cure a cancer. And I think that's true about anything. I think it's naive to believe any one treatment is ever going to cure a cancer, whether it's a drug or intravenous vitamin C or anything. Programs beat cancer because programs, in the negative sense, got you the cancer in the first place. So, I basically build a body conducive to health with people. And the question was, did that go on to take me to PPs? Why do I do PPs? I actually really enjoy doing PPs. I meet lovely people. I meet really interesting people. I think I make a difference. And what happens with most people, I would say 90-something% of people know they want to do something. They want to take some control, but they have no idea where to start. It's as simple as that. You just don't know where to start. So that's what I do. I really save them a year. I get them going. I'll plan the program.
But look, we've all seen the success at CANCERactive. We've seen the success with people following PPs. I hate this word, but what treatments do you use?
Well, all right. You and I went and played golf down in Marbella, and a lady called Farouz invited us to dinner. We never actually went. We couldn't do it. Couldn't fit it in. And Farouz came to me, and it was a long saga over about 8 or 9 years, because when she came to me, she was 1,500 CEA, and no, CA125 it was. She had ovarian, and so really, really high score for cancer cells. And within about 18 months, we got her down to 5, and she was doing really, really well. And we carried on this sort of relationship, keeping her well over a period of about 8, 9 years. And she died actually of COVID, but in Spain, they did an autopsy and they found that she had absolutely no cancer cells in her whatsoever. Fred, her husband, emailed me. But the point of the story is, Farouz actually, in all these chats, she said to me one day, she said, I've worked you out. And she said, I said, go on, what? She said, you don't treat cancer, you treat people. And I thought that was a really good observation on what I do. I actually don't treat cancer. I actually rebuild people. I give them the body they should have had in the first place. And one day when we were talking about oncologist and her oncologist, who she really liked, she was being treated in London. I happened to say something and she took it the wrong way. She thought I was being critical of the oncologist. And she said, well, of course, he's in the illness business, Chris, but you're in the wellness business. And I thought, another great insight from my patients. And yeah. I mean, that's almost the other thing that's happened to me. I've learned lots from my patients. And so I don't use treatments. I actually treat people. I build them a new body, the one they should have had in the first place. And I'm in the wellness business. I think it's absolutely true.
I think one of the important things is that, and I've heard you with people, is that you actually are interested in the person. It's not just someone sitting in an office and saying, next, please, and in comes the next patient and the next patient with no real interaction whatsoever. You've got a personal connection with people you work with.
Yeah, I said to one American lady about 4 months ago, I said, look, all I want to do is help you get better. And she went, what? I said, what I want to do is help you get better. And she said, no one's ever said that to me in America.
No, there you go. This word fascinates me. Tell me, when was the first time you got interested in the microbiome?
Well, this is fascinating because what happened was when Catherine was sort of 11th hour, 59th minute, I said to the guys at the hospital, can you give me a blood test? They said, what are the white cells and the red cells? I said, no, I don't need those. I said, I need to know what's going on inside her. And they said, we haven't got any of those. I said, hang on, this girl's beat your all-time record twice over, and you have never done blood tests on her. And so I took her down to Harley Street, and I spent what was £3,800 in those days. And they told me, first of all, she had no natural killer cells, so poor little love could never have beaten the cancer anyway. But secondly, she had really bad yeast in her body, which we kind of knew a bit about. And she had a virus in it. And they said, almost certainly both are in her brain. And I had spent a lot of time looking at yeast and things like this because she had antibiotics every day of her life for about 21 years. Well, not every day of her life, but at least once a year in, for sort of 4 or 6 weeks. But so she had long periods of antibiotics for tonsillitis. And so yeast is an inevitable consequence of that. And I actually had treated her for that, but obviously not very well. But the whole idea that she had a virus in her brain completely shocked me. And so I did lots of work on it. And then one day in about 2005, I had to write an article for the magazine. As you know, we have a magazine icon that goes into 640 hospitals, and we're hoping to bring it back in February. And it was about colon cancer. And I noticed that the symptoms of colon cancer weren't really symptoms of cancer. They were the symptoms of bad bacteria. And so I wrote this article because I'm an old man and a Rolling Stone supporter, called Mother's Little Helpers. And it was all about how your bacteria in your gut could either prevent your colorectal cancer or make it worse. And Yakult, the marketing director of Yakult, read it, and they lent me their European microbiology head. And to this day, I still say that they knew then more than most oncologists know today in Britain. But then between 2008, 2011, there was this massive study, the Human Microbiome Project in America. And 40 medical schools, 200 scientists, $178 million. We still think it's all mumbo jumbo in Britain. We still get nurses who tell our patients it's all mumbo jumbo. And in America, it's taken much, much more seriously. And it should be taken seriously because, funnily enough, only about a month and a half ago, we had a study come in. The Human Microbiome Project has said that your gut microbiome gets ill first, then you get ill, and secondly, you can't get better until it gets better. That was a mere 2,500 years after this chap Hippocrates said it. But the study that came in about a month and a half ago was exactly what I believe. It was the second part. It was a study on breast cancer, and it said women who had breast cancer and who had an unhealthy microbiome got more metastasis and survived less than people who had a healthy microbiome. It's kind of obvious, really. So we've always built people gut outwards. And so I don't like things that really negatively impinge on the gut.
Look, CANCERactive is not private and shut. The results that you've had have a public following. So for God's sake, why don't oncologists approach patients in the same way?
I think the word approach is the right word. It's very difficult for them. They operate in a system. NICE approves the drugs for price. The BMA runs the system, I guess. And I'm not being rude. I'm just trying to give an analogy. But oncologists basically are like disc jockeys. So when a disc jockey goes onto BBC Radio 1 or whatever it is nowadays and plays records for the next 2 hours, that disc jockey has got a list of records and they can only play those records. They can't go outside it. And that's exactly how the oncologist works. They can't really go outside it. If they were to go outside it, they're taking a huge risk. And I was talking to our chairman of our medical board once, and he said, what do you think the biggest cost the NHS is? And I said, oh, drugs, it's got to be drugs. He said, no, it's claims. So there's a lot of pressure on oncologists not to go outside the drug list they've got. So they'll give you paclitaxel or something like that. They'll give you carboplatin with it. Patricia Pete and I were talking about the fact that if the drug doesn't work after 3 months, they give up on the drug and they switch you to another drug. They don't try and make it work. And that's always a bit baffling to me that they don't try and they haven't learned how to make their drugs work better. They just, it's record number one had a fault in it, so they moved on to record number 2. And so I'm not trying to belittle them for one moment. They're disc jockeys. They are not going to go outside their piece of paper. They are not going to talk to you about diet and say how wonderful it is and what else it could do for you. They're not going to talk about stress management or the Human Microbiome Project or mental health or anything like that. And they're basically going to talk to you about their drugs and their antibiotics and their proton pump inhibitors. The problem is drugs, antibiotics, proton pump inhibitors, the radiotherapy, the chocolate cake, dare I say it, the milky sugary tea when you're having chemo, all those things damage the microbiome, as you know, put it down. So they're just not on the same page as I'm on. Their approach is just not the same as mine. Not criticizing.
So you don't blame oncologists?
No, I'm not criticizing them at all. They're regulated in a system, and they're not encouraged to think outside the box. There are some who think outside the box. We know a few of them. There's probably 6 to 10 in and around the London area and up as far as Cambridge, people who genuinely think outside the box. It's very difficult for them. I mean, Robert Thomas, literally just the day before I interviewed him on, he's from Addenbrooke's, he's the professor of breast cancer and prostate cancer. And he said to me, I've just been to ASCO and I presented on turmeric. He said, did you know turmeric makes the drugs work better? And I actually bit my lip for the show, but yeah, I do know it because I wrote a paper about 15 years ago on how turmeric makes drugs work better. And he said, I presented to ASCO and then I got back and the prostate cancer people, who I'm a patron of, have still got the turmeric's bad for you. He said, and I can't persuade them to change it. I said, welcome to my world. It's my world. You're in. This is what happens. So, they can get struck off. Let's be honest. If they do something outside the box and that patient goes wrong, the powers that be will look for what they might have done outside the box first. So they've got to be very, very careful. They could lose their job. What I think is going to happen, though, I think it's going to get worse. So we are noticing, Patricia Pete and I are noticing more people thinking outside the box, but the system is going to be different. So you've got the Lancet, the New England Medical Journal, talking about how 50% of all clinical trials are let's say false, slightly false, not use any other words than that. And then, more and more, everything's going to be analyzed by artificial intelligence. And, you know, it will say you will fill the form in, a manager will help you fill the form in. It will all be fed into a computer, and the artificial intelligence will do your scans and everything, your MRIs, and tell you what you've got. And then presumably Jeff Bezos and Amazon are going to deliver the pills to your door. Presumably that's where it's all going. We've already covered articles on artificial intelligence. It's better at reading a scan than your doctor. It's more accurate. And again, I said this to the chap from Royal Marsden. He, of course, didn't believe me. But I fear this is where it's all going to go. And, you know, it's like I have patients in India, and they send all their data in, they get their x-rays done and everything else, and they go to a big board outside the hospital, and number 73 is their number, and they take their prescription off that number, and they go and get their prescription filled. It's where we're going. Not my words, it's where we're going. So I think it's the system, not the oncologists. And the system is taking us to a bit of a black world, I think.
You obviously work completely outside a system because you're not governed by that. And I have to say, your approach is you're a health coach, aren't you?
Yeah, I think so. I don't make any claims. I always tell people I'm not a doctor. I'm an Oxford University Biochemist, which means I'm a scientist. I read. And I say to people, look, you know, I say, like, there's a lady sitting with her husband, the lady I'm treating or whatever, helping. And I say, my job's to be boring and thorough, your job's to be determined, and his job's to be positive. That's how the team works. And it's quite noticeable. I get quite a few lonely people, and they don't have any support. And so in a way, I have to be their mental support as well. So I'm a health coach. I do lots of things for people.
It's interesting because it is reckoned that loneliness is one of the biggest killers in England today.
Yeah. Lockdown for all sorts of reasons. Dreadful. Seriously dreadful.
Okay, but looking at drugs, I mean, you build programs around chemotherapy to make it work better and reduce the side effects.
Yeah, I mean, this is really, really interesting, you see. Okay, because doctors will say sometimes about me when they don't know who I am, they'll say to the patient, oh, he's only a biochemist, he's not a doctor. Actually, I think biochemists are the people who supply them with all their information. I don't think they could work without us. Right? That's my start point. It's not egotistical. That's our role in the process. And I think the real issue with chemotherapy is, and they should know this, cancer tumors are hypoxic. What does that mean? Hypoxia means the tumor has very, very little oxygen. And what it does is it takes healthy systems and it bends them to work in this anaerobic situation. Well, okay, use hyperbaric oxygen. And as you know, I wrote it up 18 years ago. 18 years ago, I wrote up hyperbaric oxygen. A doctor challenged me and then apologized because I sent him a 90-study meta-analysis from America that said the same 4 things as I did. What happens? You can get your oxygen to 99, 100% very quickly, 3 sessions. But number 2, it makes chemo and radio work better. It actually reduces the side effects from chemo and radio. But most importantly, what it does is if you give someone hyperbaric oxygen immediately before their chemo, it makes the tumor crash. All its systems go down, just like your computer goes down. Your computer did go down, right? It makes all the systems crash. And so the drug or the radiotherapy, or indeed IVC and things like that, have an easier job of killing off cancer cells. Now, funny enough, when I talked to Slocum, who's on Sunday night in 8 days' time, Slocum at Chemotherapy, they do exactly what I do. They give people hyperbaric oxygen immediately before the chemo, and then they go on to give someone hypothermia. Well, hypothermia, we've banged on about hypothermia for 15, 16, 17 years, and you can do whole body hypothermia. You heat the body up to 39 degrees. What happens? All the cancer cells, which die at a lower temperature, get all, twitched, and your healthy cells don't. And so they're easier to kill. And now they're using localized hypothermia in bodies in Britain with HIPEC and things like that. But nobody uses whole body hypothermia except chemothermia. But it's got a big tick on the National Cancer Institute in America. So it's not quite Chris Woollams talking about it. And the third thing that disempowers, if that's a word, cancer cells is fasting. So oncothermia make them fast for 14 hours. We don't. We use Volta Longo's program. So if someone's got chemotherapy on a Monday, IV chemotherapy, I suggest they start fasting on a Saturday evening, about 6 o'clock. By Sunday evening, their brain's going, oh no, we're in trouble, and producing something called sirtuin-1, which is the longevity hormone. It's probably the healthiest hormone you can have in your body. Shuts all your healthy cells down. And now when the drugs come in, your cancer cells are all like, come on, give me the food. And they take on the drug even easier. So you get hardly any drug going into the healthy cells, and you get more drug available for the cancer cells. Win-win. Why do I know those things? Because I read. You talk to Slocum, Dr. Slocum at the chemothermia, and he just kept saying, we're scientists, Chris, you and I. It was like two people with the same goal. Now, what happens when you go into a hospital and that guy gives you Taxol and carboplatin, ladies? What happens? They give you a bag of sugar. They actually put dexamethasone in there. What's that going to do? Put your blood sugar up. So they give you a cup of milky sugary tea and a biscuit. What's that going to do? Put your sugar up. What's that going to do? Stop the cancer cells feeding. They're all going to be full. They're not going to open up, ready for the chemo. Why would they do that? Why would they do that? Why would they do the opposite of what makes their drugs work? We give people, we say, you've got three choices. You've got hyperbaric oxygen, you've got hypothermia, you've got fasting. We like hyperbaric oxygen and fasting. Almost all my patients having chemo do that. And, I've had a lady in the West Country who had a big tumor in her rectum, and she was saying, Chris, I don't want to do the chemo. And I said, we have a program. We make it work better, and we reduce the side effects. That's the other thing we do. We reduce the side effects. So we can reduce fatigue, we can reduce brain fog, we can reduce neuropathy risk. We do. And anyway, she, literally, massive tumor. They were going to knock it back a bit, and then they were going to find the epicenter and cut it all out and give her a bag and so on. Couldn't find the tumor. 3 months later, gone. Still couldn't find it after 27 months. Just had a lady in Belize, a Jehovah's Witness, married to a husband who's English, I think. And, she's had the drugs, triple negative breast cancer, all over her, stage 4, grade 4, goes up to Miami. Miami oncologist says, I've never seen anything like this. Do you know what happened? All the tumor's gone. She just got one in her breast. That's all she got, one left in her breast. The locals didn't know anything about anything, so she made it all happen. So it's, it's sad. My attitude, I've got a lady in California, exactly the same, all gone. And it's just sad. They just don't read. They don't have time to read. It's been nice. They don't have time to read. It's not on their playlist. So I don't blame oncologists, but it's a shame.
Too busy sticking to the system. Too busy sticking to the system.
Yeah, probably, yeah.
You use the term shut doors.
Yes. I try to build people a body conducive to health. And I make people go for a blood test. And what happens is I ask them to look at their blood sugar, their fat, their cholesterol, triglycerides, in other words, their fasting blood sugar, and ask them to look at their vitamin D. Because what we find when people come to us is it's almost kind of not their fault. They don't know how to have a healthy body. And so when people walk in, quite often they're not 99% oxygen, they're a bit lower. They're often very, very low in Britain with vitamin D. They're often got high blood sugar. They've often got high cholesterol, triglycerides. They've got a very weak microbiome because of things that have happened to them. They've probably on the wrong diet. They probably got lots of stress, and there's a mental issue or two. I mean, lots of people have family problems now after the lockdown and so on, and they're probably on a very poor diet. And so basically, I look at this person, look at their notes, and I say, what I'm going to do is I'm going to rebuild your body. But what I want you to do is understand that actually cancer loves you to have an unhealthy body, and it doesn't care which bit you've not done. If you just carry on with high blood fats, it'll use the high blood fats to spread. It doesn't mind which bit it uses. So you've actually got to listen to what I'm saying for a healthy body, because in this lady who's breast cancer, estrogen, it might be, I don't know, 8 doors, but this person with leukemia, it might only be 4. And let's just shut the doors. Let's make sure you really are 99 oxygen. You really are 125 vitamin D. You really do have a blood sugar below 4 and cholesterol below 4, because we know, you know, I spent 3 days of my life, or 2 of the 3, with Tom Seyfried at Boston College, which was fascinating because he's the ketogenic diet king. And, you know, I'm the rainbow diet king, I guess. But, you know, they're not far apart. But, you know, he's got an American system of measuring everything, and I've got an English system of measuring everything. Same figures. We want your sugar below 4. We want your cholesterol below 4. Why? Because cancer can't feed, cancer can't spread. Well, it finds it much more difficult to feed and spread. So shut the door. So that's what I mean by shutting the doors. It's just a simple system. And as I say, everybody's different, for getting them to a healthy body.
And you think cancer is a metabolic disease?
Totally. And, you know, this is a sort of daft thing, really, isn't it? Cardiovascular disease, diabetes, dementia, strokes, whatever, they're all metabolic diseases. Why do we not think cancer is one? You know, those people who come to me, Robert Thomas said it to me as well. I mean, I was amazed right in the middle of me interviewing him. He's the expert. He said to me, do you notice that you get a lot of people who are on 6 to 8 drugs? I said, yeah, I do. I had one lady who had lung cancer. Her 2 daughters brought her to me, and she had lung cancer, and she was on 6, 7, 8 drugs. I was convinced that the drugs gave her lung cancer, because, and when we talked about her blood fats, and why on earth was she on statin? I have no idea. I think just because she was that age or something. And so what you tend to, if you've got a problem, a health problem, and someone gives you a drug, you end up maintaining the health problem and you're on a drug. So you've got that sort of double whammy. But I just think that cancer is almost the final step in metabolic syndrome. You know, metabolic syndrome, you've got high blood sugar, you've got high cholesterol, you've got diabetes, whatever. You know, there's like 5 conditions, and you've got to have 3 to be defined with metabolic syndrome. Look at the people who died first with COVID in Italy. They all had comorbidities, metabolic syndrome in 98.8% of people. Why would cancer be any different? I just think cancer is metabolic.
Is there some, I mean, you're a scientist, so is there science that supports you?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question, because, you know, that's the problem in cancer and any health business, that, you know, it's a bit like tummy buttons. Everybody's got an opinion, you know. And there definitely is science to support it being a metabolic disease. And, you know, I'm a scientist. Everything I do is backed by the fact I did 4 years at Oxford doing science, and I've carried on doing science. And I think what the interesting thing is here, and this is the game changer that I'm about to come up with. I learned at Oxford the somatic theory of cancer. And the somatic theory of cancer has been around probably now for about 100 years. And the somatic theory of cancer is note the word theory. It's a theory, but it is totally used by every oncologist and doctor. It's what is on the table for every patient. Now, if you sat most oncologists down over a glass of red wine or something and said, ultimately, what is cancer? They will all say it's a lost message. It doesn't have to be lost completely. It could just be imperfect, a dodgy message. Let's call it a dodgy message for the sake of this. So people have got a dodgy message, and that message could be something that tells the immune system to go and attack those blue cells over there. Okay, so go and attack those cancer cells over there. So you've lost that message. You don't have some sort of part of your system that's really important. And the somatic theory of cancer holds that in order to get this dodgy message, you have a mutation. Okay, now we start to get picky. I get picky because a mutation only means one thing to an Oxford scientist. It means you have a sequence change inside your DNA. Okay, so you've got a little sequence change in this strand of DNA that you get from dad, and you've got a little sequence change in this strand of DNA that you get from mum. But in order to lose that message, you'd have to have those two sequence changes bang opposite each other. As I said at Oxford 54 years ago, that's not zillions to one, that's nigh on impossible. They did offer me a doctorate, but it's almost impossible. Now, you know, if you sat outside Chernobyl when it blew up, you'd get a double strand break. Radiotherapy can cause a double strand break. Okay, so things can cause a double strand break. It's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the word mutation, you know, commonly used by that well-known medical journal, the Daily Mail. And mutation only means one thing to me. It means a sequence change. So the somatic theory of cancer holds that you've got a sequence change, and as a result, you've got a dodgy message. So this is perfect for the cancer industry, because what it says is, oh my goodness me, you've got a sequence change inside your DNA. You are doomed. We've got to blow it up. We've got to cut it out. We've got to burn it to death, whatever. You're doomed. So this is perfect for the cancer industry. Unfortunately, it's wrong.
So you're actually saying the basis for the whole cancer industry is false?
Yeah. In a word, yes, I agree. What it's all about is that it implies that you've got new mutations inside your DNA. And you don't have to kind of believe my view of it all. Last year, a lady called Christine Mayer, who's at Sloan Kettering, she leads her own laboratory there, and she and her team showed that there are no new mutations in your DNA. And what she actually, there was some work done by Stanford earlier on. So about 7% of all people can have an inherited mutation. It's usually in one strand from dad or mum. There's BRCA1, BRCA2 or something like that. We're not talking about those. That's just 7% of people with an inherited mutation. But we're talking about new mutations that lead to dodgy messages. And she said, everybody's looking in the wrong place. Everybody's looking in the DNA, which is inside your nucleus. And what's actually happened is your DNA is perfect, and it is copied into messenger RNA. And that messenger RNA comes out into the environment of the cell, the microenvironment around the cell. And that messenger RNA copies into proteins, or some of which are enzymes. And it's the copying process that's gone wrong. Well, that I believe. That's much easier for me to believe. The idea of mutation in both strands of DNA, impossible. So this I believe. Now, why would the copying process go wrong? Okay, because we'll use a simple word. You get pollution inside your cells. So what would cause pollution? Well, let's start with your dear old cancer research, shall we? Cancer research say that pollution's caused, cancer's caused because you eat badly, you smoke too much, you drink too much, and you don't take any exercise. They go on to say that that produces free radicals, which rips bits off your DNA, which that's a kind of dodgy conclusion. But the idea that you pollute the microenvironment of your cell with those four things, okay, I agree with that. But then what else would pollute your microenvironment? Environmental toxins, cancer research say that environmental toxins have never been proven to cause cancer. And if they ever were, it would only be a small number. Okay. Well, I liken that to saying it's never been proved that there are Martians, and if they come to Earth, it'll only be 10 of them. I mean, it's a nonsense. And the fact is, IARC in Lyon have already told us there are something like 600 and something toxins that do cause cancer. So it's just, it's nuts. But then we get a denial that stress causes cancer. But we know stress, the cortisol hormone, estrogen, thyroxine, vitamin D is a hormone. All these things, if they're in the wrong levels, can actually pollute your localized environment. And we know that, would you believe, toxins from your gut bacteria and mRNA, go ask Geoff Boycott, from parasites and E. coli and viruses, and they can pollute the microenvironment of your cell and cause changes and block your mRNA from making the right protein. That's what's going on. You literally have got pollutants in the microenvironment of your cell causing a dodgy message.
So if the copying process has gone wrong, why aren't you doomed?
Well, if the copying process has gone wrong, I think the question that the majority of scientists ought to be asking is, how have we got this far? I mean, we're 7 million years on from, the previous apes or whatever. And we wouldn't have lasted this long if we didn't have some sort of natural defense. So first of all those pollutants are technically reversible. I can kill off your parasites. We can get rid of your environmental toxins. We can detox you. You can start eating well. We could give you turmeric. We could give you fish oils. We know they block homocysteine, which is a product of eating badly and things like that. So we know we can reverse all those things. But we have lasted before all these environmental toxins for 7 million years or whatever it is. I don't know. And we are bound to have in our bodies a natural defense system, and sure enough, we do. In fact, we have two things that we make ourselves, which actually also help clean up our environment, our microenvironment, and they are melatonin and glutathione. These are the two biggest antioxidants we make. So just very briefly, I'll do it. Melatonin, everybody knows, is made in the pineal gland, but it's made 45 minutes after you go to sleep. It's not the sleeping drug. It's actually the biggest antioxidant we make. It's very, 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 very anti-inflammatory. Add those two together, it's the healing drug. That's what it does. It's why sleep is so healing. It also regulates growth hormone, and it regulates estrogen too, but it regulates growth hormone. And it's also got about 5 actions against cancer cells. Well, if it regulates growth hormone, it will regulate cancer cells. So it's kind of the cleaner upper in that sense. But on top of it, when you wake up in the morning, light hits your eye, that's it. Melatonin stops being produced. It stops being produced from the pineal gland. It's not the sleeping drug. It's one of about 8 drugs that control your circadian rhythms. So if you've just flown from New York to London, you take melatonin, not to go to sleep, but to reboot your circadian rhythm so you can get to sleep. But you make melatonin by day. And what happens is sunlight is UV at that end, rainbow in the middle, and infrared at that end. And the infrared, I think, is 34% of sunlight. And so when you're sitting in Gerrards Cross in the park or something like this on the cloudiest day in Britain, the infrared is going straight through that cloud, straight through the cloud, straight through the tree, straight through your clothes, and it's hitting your mitochondria. Now you have about 1,000 mitochondria in your muscles and your energetic cells. And when the infrared hits your mitochondria, you produce melatonin. I'm going to sound like a copy of Michael Caine. Not many people know that. And what happens is it's our natural defense, because think about it. Our power stations, like any power stations, when you're walking around, when you're eating and breathing and everything else, are chucking out black smoke. Of course they are. It's blacker if you've eaten badly or drunk lots of alcohol. Of course it is. But they're chucking out black smoke. So of course we'd have a cleanup system. So they produce their own cleanup system, which is melatonin, as long as they've got the right materials. And the materials start with turkey and go through 5-HTP, go to serotonin. 90% of it, serotonin is made in our gut bacteria, and that makes melatonin by day. But melatonin can't do the job all on its own. It calls up glutathione to help it. And glutathione is again made by us, or needs to be made by us. We make it from greens and onions and garlic and flaxseed, basically. So we make it from greens. And when you think, people just don't eat enough greens. I was reading some research that showed that in New York, the average 12-year-old, 50% of 12-year-olds could not name broccoli from a picture. So this is what's going wrong with the world. Now, glutathione you need to make. You should never take a pill. You should never actually have it IV, because it's very powerful antioxidant. And we make about 10% less when we get to 40 and 30% less when we get to 60, which tells you everything. Glutathiones, or lack of it, is linked to illness and aging. So melatonin and glutathione, we make ourselves to clean up the microenvironment of the cells. So you can do lots to clean up by your own cells, by getting on the right diet and doing stress management and so on. But on top of it, you can stimulate melatonin production and glutathione production. I'm coming around to the view that we should make melatonin as well. I know we definitely should make glutathione, but I'm coming around to the fact that we should make both of them. So there you are. So why do I not believe you're doomed, or why do I believe you're not doomed? That's put it correctly. I believe you're not doomed because my personal experience of all this says, goodness knows, we've had, as well as I know, it's bizarre. We've had people who are grade 4, stage 4, and the cancer's gone away. I mean, there are people in America, radical remission, talking about how it's all about mental attitude. Yes, it is sometimes, but it's also about giving people the right materials. I've got one lady who's had a brain tumor in America, and they gave her 3 months to live, and she's now 5 years down the line, and I'm not letting her come on my show because she wants to tell all the Americans how good I am, and I haven't got the time to help them all. So hey ho. But she's done everything naturally. So you can. I'm not saying natural is best. I'm not saying natural is better. As you know, I've got a show on whatever it is, Wednesday night, all about off-label drugs. Do I use off-label drugs? Sometimes to do a job, but it's to do a job. It's not to treat cancer.
No.
So that's my view on it. You can clean your cells up yourself and stimulate your melatonin and glutathione, and they will help you and do a damn good job. But we also have programs for beating chemo and radio and reducing side effects and so on. So I just honestly believe everybody has inside them the power to beat their cancer.
That is because of your results. Of course, the people are queuing up for a personal program anyway.
Yes, it's been the busiest year we've ever had because word of mouth, yeah. Unbelievable. I mean, you take brain tumors. This is a kind of double-edged story, but I was helping someone with breast cancer, and I said, how'd you hear about me? And they said, so-and-so, Sarah something. And I said, I know that name, it's ages ago. And they said, yes, you did her program. This was the days when it was much more informal. You did her program when you were sitting at Gatwick Airport. And I said, I remember her. I was sitting at Gatwick Airport waiting for my plane, an hour to wait. And I billed her on the phone her program for a glioblastoma, grade 4, stage 4 brain tumor. And this must have been when Catherine was alive, 2002, 2003. Well, she was alive last year. I can't help the results. I'm not lying. I'm not lying. Wendy gets the messages,
And are these your personal theories, or do others have the same belief?
No, I mean, what we're really talking about here is the law of epigenetics. or the theory of epigenetics. Sorry, let's play fair. It's called the theory of epigenetics. And in about 1994, 95, there was this new theory came up about cancer. Epi means around. So there's this kind of, this world really that's saying around the outside of your DNA, you can have changes made to your DNA. But Dr. Young S. Kim, she's head of cancer and nutrition at the National Cancer Institute in America. She talks about 9 natural compounds that can stop your cancer when you've got grade 3, stage 3, and stop a recurrence. And she talks about how if you can't eat the foods, you can go and buy quality supplements that will do it. And you've got on television, or it's on YouTube now, there's a chap called Dr. William Lai, and one of my patients said, you've got to go and watch Dr. William Lai. And I said, why? And they said, well, he's invented 8 angiogenesis drugs, but actually you won't learn anything. He's you 15 years ago, and you go and watch him, and he's on about the rainbow diet and everything else. He's on about how the microenvironment of cancer cells gets polluted and how it clears itself up. He talks about a lot, like Rob Thomas does, like I do in the rainbow diet, about polyphenols. There are 504 polyphenolic compounds in the Mediterranean diet that we know of. And polyphenols are wonderful because, as you know, in the book, it says the rainbow diet will protect and correct you. And that's what polyphenols do. They correct you. So, you know, there's no reason to feel you're doomed. There's loads of things that can help you. And there are lots of people. It's the theory of epigenetics.
So let me get this right. There's no new mutations. Cancer's reversible. And that's why you're not doomed. You know, you've got some brilliant speakers coming on over the next 8 days. And do the other speakers agree with you?
Yeah, in virtually every case, I've said to them, I said to Patricia, do you think that you're doomed if you get cancer? She said, no, goodness, no, not. And, you know, Slocum at the chemotherapy in Istanbul, you see, they are oncologists. They use normal drugs that everybody's watching this, that they'll use the drugs that a breast cancer lady gets, the drugs that a colorectal cancer guy gets, Folfox or something, but they make them work. And, you know, he talks about pancreatic cancer patients who've lived 7 years so far. And he talks about a lady who was kind of grade 4, stage 4, and said, look, I'm dead, so you might as well do what you do, and we'll see what happens. And he said, you know, it's a miracle. She got up and walked out, and she's been fine ever since. So, it's not our experience that people are doomed. And, you know, when I talked to George Cooper the other night, he went on at length about his Chinese herbs. But you've got all sorts of Chinese herbs. You've got Chinese herbs to take when you've had surgery to get rid of the pain quickly and actually heal you quickly. And you've got Chinese herbs that take away your side effects when you're having chemotherapy and so on. Well, all those things help because, you know, people die from chemotherapy. That's, you know, sometimes I worry because if you weren't with us, you know, after you've had your chemotherapy, what's happened? Your microbiome's hit the floor. You've got research from America. Your microbiome's gone down to 27% of where it should be. And your chemo has given you bad yeasts. You know, you probably don't feel like eating, so you've lost weight and so on. And all these things, you know, the doctor goes, oh, that's it, all over, bye-bye. No, that's the moment you've got to get going. You need to rebuild yourself. It's really, really important. So all the people on the show from different reasons believed it. I mean, on Friday, you got Laura Batty, was Davis. And Laura, she had colorectal cancer. It was a tumor in her gut. It was also in a lymph node. It took us a while to build the programs to get it right. Not had cancer on any scan for about a year and a half, just climbed Kilimanjaro. Beat it, I think. Can't see why she hasn't beaten it. Elmer Young on Saturday, he's a doctor, he's a holistic dentist, and he was the fun one. He was really funny. And he talked about root canals and amalgam fillings and all the thing people, I get asked all the time by ladies with breast cancer, should I have my amalgam fillings out? Should I have my root canals fixed and so on? And he does all these things. And he was just a really lovely interview. He's a sort of German working in England. And he said, I said, what do normal dentists think of you then? And he gave me an answer, and I had to say, I'm sorry, I didn't hear that, because I thought I did, but I didn't think he'd said it. And he said, they think I'm bonkers. It was really funny. And, you know, again, his attitude is, if you fix everything, if you are determined, why wouldn't you beat it? So, you know, we've Slocum on Sunday night from Istanbul. Next Sunday night, counting backwards, Dr. Elmer Young on teeth on Saturday. Laura, she and I actually put a list together from what she had done on what she thought was important for patients. So instead of an oncologist saying it or me saying it, we put her list together. And then Thursday was George Cooper on Chinese herbs, which is illuminating. And then me on Wednesday doing top 10 off-label drugs. I had to cheat a bit because I'm not too sure there are 10 wonderful ones. And then on Tuesday, Sophie True does her version of Wim Hof. She's talking about breath works and how oxygen makes your blood more alkaline, puts your immune system up and changes your mental health and so on. I mean, Elmer Young was interesting. He said teeth need oxygen, and there's a nervous system that goes through your teeth to your gut, and your teeth can put your microbiome down. I mean, wow. And Monday was Patricia Pete, and I was just asking her questions about testing. How would you test people for all this modern stuff that we want to know about, like what sort of estrogen do you have around, and how many toxins have you got in you? What sort of toxins are in you? And so we were talking about that quite a bit, as well as, you know, other things she uses that I don't use. So it was, you know, we learned lots. I mean, this week I've learned lots. I've learned a huge amount this week.
I think that's key. I think that's key. And I'm going to say this to people. I mean, CANCERactive is here to help people. You know, we're the most prolific site on the web for information to help you beat and defend cancer. I mean, there's no arguing with that, and no two ways about that. And I've got to say, I have a very strong belief that prevention is the best cure of anything. Don't get it in the first place if you can possibly help. So, you know, this is not, CANCERactive is not just for people who've got cancer. It's for people who don't want to get cancer. You know, they'd like to improve their odds. I'm not saying it's a stone cold message, but like to improve their odds. To become a member of CANCERactive, to have access to all of this week, which is being done to help people, is £60. You know, you mentioned the medical part. Sorry? £5 a month.
£5 a month. And you get all next year. If you join today, you get all next year as well. So you get all the back ones, all the spectacular, and all next year.
At less than the cost of 2 months of the Medical Bible, the Daily Mail.
I love it when they go on about mutations. You think, yeah, okay. Oh, you're doomed. You've got a mutation. My goodness me, you're doomed.
Chris, I hope people take notice of this. I hope people go to the site. I hope people become members. I hope people listen, and I hope people take note of what you're actually saying, because it's phenomenal. And the speakers that are on this week are just incredible. And, you know, the world can't thank you enough, mate. Can't thank you enough. Okay. And hey, people will listen to you next week.
Okay. It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure doing this whole series. I really enjoyed doing it. I think people will get lots out of it. I ought to just point out, we deliberately not done diet and exercise because we've already done those. They're actually on the site. So we tried to look at the other things that people don't normally look at. That's what we were doing.
And I think what you've said, that mental approach, the mental attitude, isn't the necessary key factor. It's a factor. But I'll tell you something, my opinion is that a bad mental attitude really does bring you down. And not coming on, not joining, and not getting the information for yourself is a bad mental attitude. It's a bad mistake.
I won't name them, but I tried to get one of the top people in the world for this, and they wouldn't come. I'm busy. And the problem is, if they're American, and it sounds naughty really, they want money, and they want serious money to come on a show. And I thought that was a bit sad.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, in the very first book I ever wrote, I talked about people who get cancer, often the nicest people. They actually tend to rush around pleasing everybody all the time, put themselves last. They don't actually eat properly. They don't go to the gym because they're putting everybody else last. And then what's worse, great Aunt Maud doesn't want help. She wants to do it her way, not your way. And so they get frustrated because they can see she's doing it wrong. They work in jobs that they know it's not right. A lot of teachers who know that the system isn't right and just don't complain because it's not their kind of way of doing things. So they end up in some sort of inner turmoil. And then you get people who've genuinely like lost their mum, and it was a really huge loss to them and so on. And you get that sort of huge extra stress. But what I'm seeing at the moment is lots of people with big family problems. Kids usually, I mean, you know, in people who are like 55, 60 years old, big problems with their kids. 30, 32. And, you know, all these things take their toll on the body. And we know, I mean, we know stress causes great inflammation in the body. We know it puts your blood sugar up. We know it puts your microbiome down. So cancer research, please don't tell me stress has got nothing to do with cancer, because I won't believe you.
No. Chris, thank you.
Well, I hope everybody watches the whole 8 days, because it's totally worth it. I have to tell you, I learned a lot. I think you will.
Yeah, fantastic, mate. Thank you very much.
All right, mate. It's an absolute pleasure. All right, take care. Bye.
Take care now. Bye.